Uh, Hi guys, welcome to the Lunge and Lift podcast. This week we have a special edition talking about some major sporting events that are currently happening or just recently happened by the time this recording goes live. We're going to be talking about the CrossFit Games, reviewing everything that happened there, our thoughts on the overall competition, the standout athletes, and some takeaways from what we saw happen. And we're also going to dig into some of the Olympics action. It's not yet finished as of today, date of recording, but there have been some amazing things to see and some controversial things happening that we want to investigate a little bit further. So yeah, stay tuned for lots of thoughts and opinions and
just remember they are opinions.
Unqualified comments. But hopefully you get something interesting and useful out of it as well. But as always, before we get started, a big thank you to our sponsor, Wit Fitness. Please check out the store online at www.wit-fitness.com and use our discount code LL15 to get 15% off your purchase. But with no further ado, let's get into it.
Yeah. So CrossFit Games, mate. Did you watch it for the main start, or did you mainly just watch the recaps? Or
I did watch it. I watched as much as I could live, and the coverage on YouTube is pretty good, isn't it? And you can just sort of skip through it, and I feel like it's leveling up in professionalism every year, which makes it much more digestible and some sketchy commentary. But
some of that commentary is just it. So if you haven't watched it and you didn't watch it, or you didn't watch it on YouTube, the commentary, it'll be like, did you see the thing where they talk about Panchik's knee and they're talking about the double unders? And they was like, oh yeah, it's just as well they're doing a workout, so he's got obviously a really bad knee, double unders, it should be fine. And then they talk to him and goes, oh yeah, double unders is going to be the worst thing for him. And you're like, come on guys, it's terrible. It's there's a lot of contradicting themselves continuously.
Yeah, exactly. And just like bro science and like like they should definitely be doing this workout like this, and then they just do it nothing like that.
Well, I suppose he knows his body really well, and like
But like overall, I thought it was brilliant. I think the structure was much better this year than last time. It was the live in-person big competition. The cuts were good, and the programming was good in terms of it was a much better, well-rounded balance of fitness, I thought. Like in previous years, there've been competitions where like grip has been a major limiter, and you see the athletes, all their hands are just completely chewed up. And I think if the programming is wrecking everyone's hands and it becomes a bit of a competition of who's got the best calluses instead of who's fittest, that's not ideal. So I think as much as I hate to give anything to him, Dave Castro did a decent job.
I loved how much running there was in this one. I found that really interesting. I don't know, compared to others, I don't know how much more running there was, or if there wasn't more running, but it felt like they were running a lot more throughout this CrossFit Games, and I thought that was a really good test, because it's like the 500 meter run. I love that, because it's like no one tests a 500 meter run. You do 400 meters, or you might do 600 meters. You don't do 5. So it was a really interesting test, and it's just so funny to see big lads running. Like when you see someone like Royce Dunn, who's a big man, and he just looked like he's just clambering along. It's been. What was your favourite event, would you say, from the games?
I think the run and clean ladder was my favourite. I think it's a nice contrast of tests in that, you've obviously got the speed and fitness component, and then the 1 rep max strength and skill for the weightlifting. And it was interesting how people approached it. I think I would have liked to have seen people push the run a little bit harder, because when people were missing, I don't think they were missing because of the run. They were missing because they were missing. And at the end of the day, it's a race. So in terms of optimal race execution, you should be running as fast as you possibly can without missing, just without missing. And the guys or the guys and girls who finished it didn't really look at all close to missing, which suggests that they could have run a lot faster. And I think that would have made things a little bit more exciting if people were really stressing about how fast they were running.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's still a great event otherwise. And I really enjoyed the handstand
And the deadlift
obstacle
one.
course, right?
Oh,
No,
the obstacle course one.
yeah,
Yeah, that was really
yeah,
cool. I
like a
loved
pure
that.
skill one.
Yeah.
That was decent. How about you? What did you like?
I loved the deadlifts and freestanding handstand push-ups. I thought that was a really interesting thing because just from doing it was in a way it was what's it called now? I can't remember. 21:15.9 deadlifts and handstand push-ups.
Diane.
It was like an extreme Diane. And I love that because it's just like if you've done Diane before, as I said, 21:15.9 of deadlifts at 100 kilos and handstand push-ups, and like the deadlift build up of like the lower back pump and stuff like that, but then to go to the extreme of not only a heavier bar on a short bar, so 180 kilos or 405 pounds on a short bar, so that's going to be a tough bar to deadlift, and then do freestanding handstand push-ups. I thought that was a great test at the end of a weekend. Like, it's such high skill. I loved it. But do you know, I actually really liked, and I think it's just like the strongman like love for me, which is like event 13, which was the 20 GHD sit-ups, the 8 burpees over the hay bale with that. I think for guys it was like, I think it was 100 pounds. Like essentially like a D-ball in a way, or they called it the cheese curd, and then the yoke carry at 605 pounds. So that's about 280 kilos, I think it is. So like, I love that. It was like you worked for 2 minutes and then rested for 1. So it was like 3 lots of 2-minute rounds and then a 3-minute round at the end. And to watch some of the athletes like nearly complete it in 1 round was just amazing to see. And also I think you've got to put out for event 12 with the 1 rep max snatch. I think it's always good to watch people like a 1 rep max. I'm surprised we haven't seen a clean and jerk in ages. We've seen cleans.
That's true.
I haven't seen the jerk side because again it's been overhead squats. There's been obviously you've had the total, which gets done quite a bit, but yeah, we haven't seen a clean and jerk. That would be really good to see. But yeah, so 1 rep max snatch, awesome. I love that. And I don't want to butcher his name, but the Brazilian Gui. I remember Gus always trying to tell us Guilherme. That's it. I'm not going to go in there. Can you say it?
Guilherme, is it?
Guilherme. Yeah.
Malheiros.
I think, and as even the commentary said, it's a name you should start to learn how to say because he's going to be a name that's going to be a consistent. Because where did he come this year? Was it 7th? So and he's I mean, epic performance from him. But so,
great personality.
Yeah, I loved it. Really, and I think especially for like, I think because I've seen him on social media from what Gus has said about check out this guy and stuff like that, and just see the guy like how young he was, and obviously he's still, what is he like? What is he? 19, 21? Oh yeah, 21. So 21. So he's still so young, and he's 7th. So he's
already strong enough. Like,
like, as I say, Fraser coming in as strong as he did, just didn't have to stress too much about strength and just get that capacity. But one thing was interesting, though, was seeing how obviously he was a fast, like strong athlete. But then when it comes to that event 13, the one with the yoke carry, he didn't have that grind. So that's I think something which if he would take away and say, right, that's something I need to get better at. And I remember seeing in one of the documentaries how Ben Bergeron was saying about Katrin Davids, or how she's just not, I think it was in one of the films, says she's not good at moving things basically from like A to B, like just grinding things out and stuff like that. She's good at all the high skill stuff and that, but she's not good at that. And then she got better at it, and because they focused on it and stuff. So I mean, for me, that's the type of stuff I love. But so it was just really good to see.
Yeah, I think, one thing before I forget, I just want to give a quick shout out to previous show guests, Kelly Friel, for winning her Masters category, which is an unbelievable effort. And really pleased to have had her before she made it so big.
We knew it before it was cool.
Yeah, now she's in the stratosphere. So huge congratulations to Kelly for her win there, and also Andre Houdet for placing 15th in his rookie year at the games. I'm sure he'll be back to do even better. I think seeing his progress in the last couple of years has been absolutely phenomenal, and the fact that he's progressing compared to the field is what's so impressive. He was already very good, but he's making up ground on the other guys, which I think in sports is not often appreciated, because, you know, in CrossFit as an amateur, if you're getting better at everything, you think you're doing well. But as an elite or professional athlete, you have to not only be getting better, but you've got to be getting more better than everybody else to be climbing the field. And it's that relative speed of improvement which actually determines your success, and is so difficult to achieve because everyone's out there, and the rate at which everyone's getting better is only increasing as sports science gets implemented to a greater degree. And I think he should be really proud of that. And if you'd like to hear about their preparation for the games, check out our episodes 58 and 69 to get a little bit more insight into who they are and what their preparation for the games is like. And
well, you should have already listened to them already, because you listened to all our episodes. But if you want to recap, they're those episodes. But I tell you what, was watching Andre as well, like in like the clean event, and he was like up against basically Saxon Panchik as well. Like this, he was. It was like nail biting type thing to watch. He was just doing so well, and then I can't remember, but I think he missed the lift. And then he then dropped a couple of places from that, because then I think people like Vellner and stuff, I can't remember exactly, but I remember watching him and it's just like, oh no. But yeah, it's great. Such a good, I think, to kind of summarize the games, I thought such a good test of fitness this year. And I think the cuts were done at the right time. I think it's great to have the cuts, because again, if you've got people that were in like say 38th and then say winning an event and say the last few days, it's like, that can be interesting for obviously how much it can change the leaderboard and stuff like that. But as well, I think having to fight to the end, I think also makes it even more of an interesting approach, because you could come 21st and you could have been like, say, someone like Vellner in Fikowski. Like when you look at them in the 2019 games, how when they got knocked out and stuff like that, and people queried that and said maybe they should have been knocked out, their fan favourites. Like, well, this isn't a thing about fan favourites. This is about the fittest on earth. And it's funny how Vellner, like, he has such a glaring weakness of like endurance things, because he always does badly on like the first event. Just always. And he always has to fight back so much. And then to finish second, I mean, like, just imagine that if he didn't have such a bad first event, he probably would have won, because he would have, like, Fikowski obviously then was in the leader jersey for some of it. But Vellner, I don't understand how someone of such an elite caliber doesn't then have that nailed down, if you know what I mean. I get it could be a weakness, like, because I get like strong as an ox, like one of the strongest in the field. So like when Sam Dance was there, like, think, come last in the trail run and then come first in the deadlift. I get that it's similar, but someone like Vellner, who is so good across the board, it's really interesting to see someone with quite a glaring weakness. But he's obviously a lot better than me. I'm not saying like, but it's interesting to see compared to the field that he's against, to not be doing better.
Yeah, well, that is one of the reasons why I think the programming is so good, is that CrossFit is the sport of general physical preparedness and about being competent in everything and having no weaknesses. So having even one big gap in your fitness will cost you. And I think the female example of this for me is Hayley Adams, who's so fit and so good in so many ways, but is just missing that top end strength, and she couldn't do the first bar in the second clean ladder. And when you have a bomb event like that, and like Vellner had, you're going to make it so hard to win. And that is sort of like the principle and ethos of CrossFit, is that you should have no weaknesses, and the games programming was good enough to punish people who do have something. And if you look at Tia and Medeiros, their worst finishes, I think 6th was Toomey's worst finish, and she's obviously insane, just so dominant. But I think Justin Medeiros had one 15th as his worst, 113th, and everything else was like comfortably top 10. So he just has nothing where he bombs out.
And it didn't win an
the way
event
that
until
it's
the final.
scored, yeah, exactly.
That was the only event we had. And did you you watched it, right? And I think it was such good showmanship going from the back rack to front rack. I was like, fuck yeah, like that's good. I think that was a winner's mentality at the end there. I loved that. That
has whispers of Fraser about it, doesn't it?
Yeah, do you remember when he done the overhead squat and then walked forward to bridges and then done another one and then failed the next rep, and it was just like that. Yeah, you could just tell he's been in the presence of Matt Fraser, and like not taking anything away from his own obviously fucking graft and grit, but that mindset shift. Because I remember watching the YouTube video of like a training thing that he did with Matt Fraser, and you just would have known like workouts and like try this, think about it like that, and just it was so good to watch and not know who's going to win. I love that, because again, it's like I love watching the domination that Matt Fraser had, and just like how much is he going to win it. Same as with Tia, it's like it is amazing to watch, but at the same time, it's not knowing who's going to win also makes it even more, especially with the men's, how it was so close as well. That was like, is Velner going to do it? Oh, he's just not mathematically going to be able to, like, it's cool.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. And I think, it's going to be a great year again. Like, there's a lot of exciting athletes on the scene, and hopefully the people who've had their weaknesses identified are going to spend some time on it. I think it's an interesting one, because like you say, if you have a weakness that you're very aware of, you should be hammering it. And to have the same weakness 2 years in a row suggests that you haven't been. And like putting on strength when you're already very strong can be very difficult, but it is possible. And I think if I was to be so bold as to suggest an approach, but being brave in omitting certain aspects of your training to just double down on those weaknesses. Like if you're Haley Adams and you're so good at everything across the board, just taking away some volume on the stuff that you're already very good at to really just go all in on weightlifting and strength work is what needs to be done. Because if you come back next year without being significantly stronger, it's going to be almost impossible to win.
So it's the same thing again, isn't it? It's going to be the exact. You're going to finish fifth again because you're going to have those stronger athletes. Because the problem is, sorry to bite, but it's like across the board, as you mentioned earlier, it's like everyone is basically doing the same thing. Everyone is getting better at the same rate. So she already has the extra edge of really good grit, determination. Like you watched her in I think it was the Mid-Atlantic CrossFit Championships, I think, the one in Tennessee. But how she basically competed in the field of like a really stacked field, like come second to Tia, like, and done so well. I honestly thought she would do better at the games. But then I think, as you said there, like the strength side of stuff just really was a glaring weakness. And it's surprising that obviously someone who's trains essentially with Rich Froning, who is a very strong athlete as it is, but it's like surely Rich would be seeing this and be saying like, maybe we need to cut you because you're already extremely fit. But obviously that's what the off season's for, right? So fingers crossed that's what she's going to do now. She's going to review that and go forward. And I guess it's the same with Velner, right? Because obviously how he's high quality gymnastics because he obviously got a gymnastics background, extremely strong. Fucking do some triathlons and fucking do some shit and get fit and maybe lose a couple of pounds off the deadlift and so forth. But he's still going to be one of the strongest. And I think maybe dropping a couple of places in a strength event and building up, say, half the field on an endurance event, points overall average is going to be better. So not that we're obviously telling the second best in the world how to get better, but it's if this was us and we was that thing, I just do wonder what goes through his head every year when he knows that the endurance event he's not going to do that well at. Like, why is it a weakness? So
yeah, I'm sure they'll get on it.
Who would you say are your ones to watch for?
Well, obviously, Guilherme Malheiros, butchering the pronunciation. I think he's obviously a hot new prospect in that he's very charismatic, he's very strong, he's fast, which is sort of the sexy types of fitness compared to like endurance. And I think South America is a big growth area for the sport of CrossFit. So he's going to be a big featuring presence in the next few years of the sport. And that's probably the most obvious one to pick. The other obvious one is Mal O'Brien.
Yeah.
I can't remember how old. She's 17, is that right?
I think so, yeah. She got Rookie of the Year as well, didn't she?
Exactly. Unbelievable. Also 7th. And, if you're 7th in the CrossFit Games at age 17, you can only have done so many years of training and you've got probably the best years ahead of you.
Yeah.
So, it'll be very interesting to see how well she does. How about you? Anything different to that?
I'd have to say I'd say to both. But one thing who would you say done not as good as you thought they should do?
Noah Olsen was the one for me.
The exact same person I was going to say. Yeah. I was shocked. I guess I know he's obviously from what I've seen on social and stuff like that, how he's had like gallbladders, like issues, like kidney stones, like he's had some issues and stuff. He has had quite a bit. He hasn't had the smoothest ride up to it, but I was just shocked from being second in 2019. Then obviously last year, that 5th games, I think he came fourth or 5th. He didn't do well there, but still, forgetting that games. Then going to this one, I honestly thought he was going to be a standout person pushing for that podium. And when I watched the shows before the game started and people were giving their predictions, like as I say, I reckon no one said Noah Olsen. And I was shocked. I was like, why is no one saying no? He comes second in 2019. Like, why is he not being mentioned? And then I don't even know where he finished. I remember
I think he was 10th, but he just never, it seemed like he never really got going. I think he had a reasonably strong last day or two, but he was just never really in contention, which, was a surprise for me too.
Yeah, I think it was a shame because I like Noah Olsen. I think he's a great character, and I think he seems like such a down to earth person that he's just a fit guy, and it's just a shame to see that he didn't quite obviously live up to what I thought he would. But I'll tell you what's interesting though is comparing. So obviously, I'm just going to say his name G. I'm going to call him G. Gilio, basically him hitting his snatch, obviously the 1 rep max snatch, which was 138 kilos, right? And then you compare that to the Olympics of someone who weighs less than him, Li Zhaojun. Another name I'm going to butcher. How do you say it?
Yeah, I think it's Zhao Jin.
Yeah, Zhao Jin. Anyway, hitting 170 kilos. So at a lighter body weight, yes, he is a specialist of his trade, but I mean, that is just insane. But we obviously celebrate the 138 kilo snatch. Don't get me wrong, I have had a 130 kilo snatch. Just put it out there, but I also weigh probably 10 kilos more than the guy. But I mean, for me, it was really interesting because we have this world the Olympics being the specialists of all their trades. So we're getting to see swimmers, we're seeing weightlifters, we're seeing all these things, all parts of CrossFit essentially, right? Which is where and we get to see what it looks like to specialize in one thing and then to be a jack of all trades in another. And I think to then, like we just mentioned there with, say, Vellner, not being good at endurance, right, but being a jack of all trades and everything else, right? So then you just think if he did focus on endurance and just bringing that up, I don't know. It's been a really interesting thing to compare the both.
Massively, I absolutely love the Olympics. Yeah. I almost forget because it's so long between them how much I absolutely love it. But yeah, you're spot on to see people dedicate pretty much their whole lives to one craft or maybe variations of it if you swim and do loads of different strokes. But it is insane just to see what the human body can achieve with the right stimulus and the right dedication. And the weightlifting was one that stood out to me, just seeing these absolute mutants, what they can do. When you know what a barbell weighs and you see what they do with it, it is mind blowing. And Liu Xiaojin snatching 170. Just
Yeah.
know what 170 feels like,
Yeah.
and
How
what he does with it is
fast
just,
and how just like there was no when that bar went overhead, there was no hesitation. That bar it was locked in. It didn't look like 170 kilos. And I think you're 100% right. When you have that, I think comparison where you know what that weight feels like, and he's clean and jerk at 204 kilos. And the jerk is a squat jerk again. So you know the mobility requirements of that movement and like how fast and secure. It's just like, it is, I say, it's mind blowing to see what a specialist can do. Yeah. And to see what, like, because I think, as I say, like when we're surrounded by, say, CrossFit and trying to get good at everything, and like just seeing then if you don't specialize, that you're just going to be kind of average. Obviously, these are superior. When I say average, I'm talking about the field that they're in. So then you compare that then to the elite of, say, weightlifting, elite of swimming, elite of that. You're just like, wow. Like, but to be fair, Tia, she's gone and competed at the Olympics and she done well. Yeah. Like, so she
got a Commonwealth gold.
Yeah. So, she smashed it. So, and she dabbled in a bit of bobsleigh in her off season, didn't she?
Yeah, I saw that.
I don't know how much should come of that, but it's pretty cool.
Time, yeah. You know what I want to see? I want to see a decathlete move into CrossFit.
Sorry, a what?
A decathlete.
I thought you said a decathlete. I thought, what's a decathlete?
Yeah. I'll tell you later. Yeah, just because obviously that's a rounded test of fitness of lots of different aspects. And of any athlete, you think they would be most naturally pre-built for CrossFit, considering the varied demands of decathlon. And it'd be interesting to see how they hold up. There isn't anything super long endurance. I think that's the only thing. 1,500 meters is about as long as it gets. But
what would you say is the closest gymnasty kind of thing? Because I don't know all the decathlon off the top of my head. I know it's a lot of obviously the field sports, but is it like?
Yeah, it's track and field. There's no gymnastics.
So I think that would be like, because again, you look at someone like Matt Fraser, who was a weightlifter, who then come in and just had to learn the gymnastics and be fit because he was able to just maintain that strength. But on the Olympic side of stuff, obviously it was great to see a silver medal for the females for the GB. Emily Campbell, 161 clean and jerk.
Yeah.
That's my max that I've ever hit. I was like, wow. So again, watching that, and I think they said online it was like first weightlifting medal since 1984. So it's in like that, because obviously you're competing against the Eastern Europeans, the Chinese, who are just like phenomenal. As you said, like muted, they are just strong as oxes. So to see a silver was amazing. And what about the first of all, I think Lasher obviously hitting that. He's a funny athlete because he's got so much in the tank, but obviously they get bonuses, don't they, for every time they break records. So you can just for me, and I think that's what he's doing, because obviously he hit a 225 snatch and a 270 clean and jerk, and they both looked easy. And you're just like, you've got more, and you've got more. So it's just, I mean, fair play to him, because if he's getting an earner every time he builds a weight, because you don't want to smash it and not get any more world records going forward. So, I mean, he's playing the game. But I wanted to get your Laura Hubbard, obviously, she was a controversial story, I guess, before the Olympics. Obviously, being the first transgender athlete in the Olympics, and obviously she's a weightlifter. She missed her first three, so obviously snatch and then clean and jerk, and missed all three attempts of the snatch. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, why she missed, or her inclusion in the Olympics?
I think the why she missed thing would be a nice first thing, because it's like I think she went 120, then 125, 125. So I think she went up. I don't quite remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure. So because you can't go down, can you? Once you've set, so as in like, so she fucked that, obviously, with that. What are your thoughts on, should she be at the Olympic Games? Should she be competing? Yeah, I know. I don't know how much we want to go down this rabbit hole.
Well, I haven't actually confirmed this, but I believe the IOC has changed their policy for the next Olympics on the criteria for inclusion. Again, don't quote me on that. I think one of my mates just mentioned it in a WhatsApp group, so it could be absolutely
credible source. Yeah,
it could be a meme, but I think that's like 51% sure that's accurate. Which, you know, like there's a lot of scientists speaking about it and a lot of former athletes speaking about it, and I think it's hard to get away from the scientific facts of male puberty does have a different effect on the body and its capacity for athleticism.
Yeah.
And if somebody has had those physiological benefits, is it fair for them to compete against athletes who have not? And I think my opinion is that it is unfair to compete in those circumstances. And that's not to say that transgender people should be excluded from competitive sport. I think we just need to be a little bit more nuanced in how they're included to make things fair and give enough respect to former female athletes or of the past and all their world records, and also the current ones that haven't had the benefit of male puberty.
So quickly, before I kind of give my thoughts on this slightly, what was the new thing going? That you think you're 51% sure? Is it saying that they're not going to be included in the next Olympic Games?
They're revising the rules, as much as I'm.
Oh, okay. So
sure
for me, I have to fully agree with you. My one thing, because I was trying to think about this, because I guess when someone goes from, sorry, this is now non-fitness, this is now going into who knows where, but when we go from, I guess, a guy going to a girl, they have to have a load of estrogen put into them, I guess, to try and obviously to balance their hormones out in a different way. I don't know the details, but that's what I'm guessing, right? And if you're going the other way, you're having to have a load of tests put in you, right, to obviously go more masculine. So you can't really have a transgender category, because what are you going to, unless you go transgender male, transgender female, because that's then the only way. But that's, I guess, the only way we'd be able to keep a level playing field, because I think you're right. It was in like, if you've got a female that has dedicated their life to a sport, and then you've then got a man who's decided to become a woman and compete in a sport, like whether they missed all their attempts or whatever, like if they didn't, Laurel didn't, Laurel, yeah, it was Laurel, yeah. So if she hit her first attempt and then broke some records, is that a world record? Is that comparable to the female world record? And for me, I don't think that's fair. I don't think there should be segregated per se, but it's like when it happened in MMA, didn't it, as well? Was it MMA or boxing? There was a fight. There was a fight sport of, and you just can't have that. Because it's just when you've had, like, no matter what, male and female bodies are different. I think in the last episode when you was obviously talking with Chloe, you know, we are different people, right? So our bodies can handle different things. We've been brought up differently. A man going to a female, having a fight with a female, is still going to have a lot of maleness to them, if you know what I mean. And it's just, it's a very, I wouldn't want to be having to try and work this out. No, because to be inclusive, which I do think is important. I do think people should have everyone should have a place at the elite. If people are dedicating their lives to a sport, I do think everyone should have a chance to perform. I do think that. But I don't feel that a man to a girl should compete in that. Just like I bet you wouldn't get a woman going to a man trying to compete with men, because they wouldn't stack up. They just wouldn't. Like you would not, because your weight. It just. I doubt it's. I don't know. I haven't seen the stats, but I just wouldn't. I doubt it would happen. Just because of that same principle.
In sport, fairness should be one of the fundamental values of sport and competition. And if we use the Paralympics as another example, they have very clearly defined criteria for what disability you have and who you can compete against. And I think this is just another dimension by which we need to consider fairness. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's almost everything I've got to say on it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and that's the thing. I think as we're kind of progressing, and I say progressing because it's a progressive, apparently, state that we're in at the moment, where everything's questionable. And you just, even like now, I'm trying to be PC. I'm trying to make sure I don't say anything I shouldn't say, because I've obviously got very strong opinions on certain things. But I'm one that I don't always think before I say it. I say it and then think, oh fuck, I should have said that. So I'm trying to, as you might be able to tell, I'm trying to be more like Ash with my words and being a bit more precise. But on a controversial topic, what do you think about, and I'm going to make it clear with my thing, the bullshit of sharing a gold medal? Did you see the high jump? And so, did you watch the event at all, or do you know the details of what happened?
I don't know in huge detail. I saw highlights and the viral clips of it, and bullshit wasn't actually my first instinct, although I can see why you think that. The first reaction to it for me was it's heartwarming and amazing to see two people achieve their Olympic dream together and make history. And
what history was made though? Sorry, what history was made? The first people to share a gold medal?
They weren't even the first, actually. It happened about 100 years ago, I think. But I don't know the exact details of the rules in terms of... So I think for listeners who might not have seen this, two high jumpers basically, as far as I understand it, jumped the same height and then no one could jump higher. So I think the rules are that they would then go into a jump off where they just keep trying until someone misses.
Which obviously someone's going to deteriorate. They are going to deteriorate. You keep trying to do the same thing. Is that it can only go on for so long. So so when I say bullshit, because it's just that's my strong opinion of it, but I understand to some degree. But personally, I think don't you think this is going towards a participation award type shit? Like, oh, I'm going to come along and don't get me wrong, they both performed and they were the best on the day, but they had the opportunity of a jump off or to share their gold medal. You're at the Olympic Games. You should be, as an elite athlete of your sport, personally, I feel you should be trying to win that gold. That's yours. It's mine. It's no one else's. You do not share that thing.
Well, this is an interesting way of thinking about it then. They've already got a gold. If they have the option of sharing it, so all they're then competing for is so that the other guy doesn't get a gold. The gold medal's already in their pocket. So if they were to pursue the jump off, all they're doing is trying to take the other guys away from him. So it's more of a...
All right, mate.
No, just like...
No, you're right.
Just, that's probably how they saw it. But I think that you do raise an interesting point, though, with the jump off and the fact that somebody will eventually fail. Is that now testing a high jumper in high jump, or is that a poor proxy? It's almost like jump endurance rather than high jump. Yeah. So this reminds me of how I feel about football and penalty shootouts, isn't that they're a shit way to decide who's a better football team. And obviously with England losing the Euros recently, I've talked about it a lot with friends, and it is just a poor replication of the sport to decide who deserves to win, especially in the final of a major competition. And I think with any sort of tie-break format, there needs to be an accurate representation of the sport and the skills. And a penalty shootout, in terms of the overall game of football, I think is a really poor representation of that whole sport. And actually last night I was watching the men's hockey, field hockey final, and that went to a shootout. And for them, they start on the 25-meter line or 25-yard line and dribble, have 8 seconds to beat the keeper. And at least then there's a little bit more hockey involved in it. There's some dribbling, there's some shooting, there's some like one-on-one with the keeper is a bit more representative. And I think, whoever comes up with the rules for sports and these tie-break formats, the more like the sport it is, the fairer it is. And if on that high jump event, they couldn't be separated in the essence of high jump to then just go into a jump endurance tiebreaker, fair enough, that's not a million miles away from high jump. But if they've both proved that they can jump the same height, and actually the guy who can jump the same height for more reps is the winner, it's a slightly different thing. And
yeah. But would you say that's so? Just on this, then, wouldn't you say that obviously yes, jump endurance isn't the sport, right? It's not, but you'd have the same amount of rest because it's then tension, right? So essentially you're going to get rest, you're just like you normally do. So then all you're doing is your jump, you're just keep your competition is still going on. So if there's more people in the field, it would still be going on. Do you know what I mean? So it's like jump endurance is part of it. Just like, and it's like I agree partly with your penalties thing, but I'm just like, if you cannot score in 120 minutes to beat another team, then you got to go to penalties. Like it's for me, I think it's a bit of a horrible way to lose. But again, footballers paid the big bucks to be able to step up to a spot and perform. So technically, it's part of their sport. It's not theirs. It's a very small, and it's, as you say, it is a bit of an unfair way to determine. But I'd say after 120 minutes, if you cannot do it the fair way, then fuck it. You're going to penalty shootouts, and you then go. If it goes to sudden death, then there. Same as with the jump. I personally feel that they should have kept jumping, because if you're not that much better, which is going to go into one of our next points of like the medals of like mindset stuff. But if you're not that much better than someone, then you need to make sure you can outperform it in another way. Like that's for me. Like if you're both on the same height, then who can keep doing that height the most? Because they did both fail the next split, the smallest jump up. So I understand that. But even in the commentary, they said I'm pretty sure the guy from Qatar, I think, had a better jump at the bigger height, and he just missed that. That was, if I remember the commentary was right, he's like, oh, you just missed that compared to the other guy, the Italian, who clearly didn't get it. So I'm like, okay, then if you're going on that, I would have given the Qatar guy the medal. So I would have said keep trying that high one, because I reckon he would have been able to get it. I don't know.
Yeah,
and just
I think that's a fair point. I think the jump off is a fairer way to decide between two people in high jump than a penalty shootout. Like my thoughts on the penalty shootout: wit 7-a-side football team has a chance of winning a penalty shootout against anyone in the world.
I know,
and I think that is ridiculous for a way of deciding who gets to win a major competition.
But I'm going to say that, but the wit would not have got to the final.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So it's in.
Well, maybe.
Maybe. But you can only fluke it so far. And if penalty shootout is a fluke to some degree, say, because it is luck. Because if the keeper gets the right direction, it doesn't matter how good your penalty is. Most of the time, he'll save it. I'm being very general there, but I'm saying you get the right direction-ish, you're hopefully going to save it compared to, say, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure Witt wouldn't have. I don't know how good you guys are. You're not going to get there, but
it's in the fridge.
But I think this kind of also then comes down to, I guess, high performance, and so from when I said about like sharing the gold medal, I don't want the Olympics to be taken over by essentially this like participation event thing. Because the Olympics for me is the top, as we said, the best of the very best competing against the best of that one thing. There should be no middle ground. It should be you are the best and you are second best and you are third best, and everyone else is on obviously down the table. But that is the order. So, and I think when it comes to being able to perform at that high level, it does come down to practice, obviously, that constant repetition, that's showing up every day to training, getting that mindset right, and understanding of performing at the highest stages. And when we've had such essentially an odd Olympic Games, so not only has these guys, I think they prepared for 5 years, not 4, because obviously it was an extra year having to wait for the COVID stuff to go by. So then they've had to go to an Olympics where there's no crowds, a completely different procedure. These are all just excuses, personally, for elite athletes to not perform. And yes, they're bad situations. Yes, they're something which is not the norm. Every single athlete is going through the same thing. And Matt Fraser, last year at the Games, even though CrossFit was one of the only things to still keep kind of go ahead, still turned up, did exactly what he did, dominated. Yes, it was a field of 5, but dominated that field of 5 and still won all the other pre-online things that done everything he needed to get to that and then win the Games. That is the mindset of an elite athlete. Not saying these Olympians aren't, because obviously so much, they are elite athletes, but it kind of goes into the thing for me that Simone Biles, how she pulled out. It was after, I can't remember which one it was. She basically said about mental health, didn't it? She pulled out the team thing and said, right, you guys go ahead with it. And they won silver, and you do you. I don't want to affect you guys. Now, for being the best at a sport like gymnastics, so to be the best at gymnastics in the world, to then pull out because of mental health, for me, that's part of an elite athlete. Like, you're not going to have the best mental health. That's why you don't last so long in the sport, because it's an isolated time of your life where you're giving everything and not worrying about anything else. Like, that's how you become the very best. That's why not many people make it to that level. Otherwise, everyone would be bloody doing it. What are your thoughts on Simone?
I think that it's a very interesting point for discussion, in that we've got to separate mental health from performance and success, because I think everything gets bundled together as right or wrong. And at the end of the day, nothing's right or wrong. It's just like opinion. So she did what she thought and her coach thought was best for her and the team in that moment, because her head wasn't in the right place. And she was worried about, one, letting the team down, and two, injuring herself, because I can't remember what they call it, like the spinnies or something, when gymnasts lose. There's a funny name for it, where basically they just, when they're not feeling right, they lose their ability to perceive their position in space. So she only span 1.5 times instead of 2.5 times, and then had a big stumble. So she obviously didn't have her head in the right place on the vault. So she made a decision for her personal priorities to look after her mental health rather than try and go for a gold. And yeah, like I say, right and wrong is an opinion. She chose to prioritize her mental health instead of going for gold. Other people might have preferred her to go for gold instead of her mental health, but at the end of the day, it's her choice. So you can't say one way or another. And on the flip side of it, I think there should be a distinction between mental health and mental performance, because kind of to your point, they are very distinct. And being able to put your head in a place where you can perform regardless of circumstances is what unlocks winning at the highest levels. And that's not necessarily healthy. So perfect examples of this are Tiger Woods and Michael Phelps, two of the most successful athletes of all time, who've both spoken out about having mental health issues since. And the question there is, are those mental health issues a positive adaptation for sporting performance? Are those troubles that they have what actually allows them to focus so intently, block everything out, ignore emotion, and just execute? And we think because they're successful that they're also happy and that they also have good mental health, but that's absolutely not the case, as they've made very clear. Same with Johnny Wilkinson. He says, like, he won the World Cup and then he went into a massive depression, and sporting success does not equal good mental health or happiness. So the question then becomes, like, what's the priority? Like, are you more worried about winning than you are about happiness and mental health? Some people yes, some people no, and there's no absolutes, no rights or wrongs. But I think what Simone has done, amongst many other things outside of gymnastics that have benefited the world, is just draw attention to that point, that there are trade-offs being made, and there's a lot of pressure on athletes. And these days, more than ever, social media and the awareness of people's thoughts and expectations about you as an athlete are more in your face than ever. So it's going to be more difficult to maintain a headspace that allows high performance as compared to previous years. And the psychological preparation is, as important as the physiological preparation if you're going to be competing on these higher stages. And I think it should be in the benefit of all athletes going forwards that people are just more aware of it now as something to work on and prepare, and potentially make that decision point of, am I willing to sacrifice a bit of short-term mental health for performance? And let's get this straight. High performance and elite performance isn't good for your health. Like, athletes all pick up injuries. They are trying to realize their athletic potential. So they're pushing their bodies to the limit. And that comes with risks that are not in alignment with optimal health and longevity. But then they're knowingly making that trade-off. And so they perhaps might be making the same trade-off with their mental health to cultivate a mindset that allows them to win at the expense of feeling good. Yeah. And one of the examples I wanted to highlight about this was in the swimming. Team GB won gold and silver in the 200 meter freestyle. And I think his name's Duncan Scott. It's the guy who came second by 0.02 seconds.
Against his teammate.
Against his teammate, yeah. Absolute photo finish. And he's obviously gutted because he's that close to getting a gold. They then won the 4x200 meter freestyle relay. And they were interviewing the 4 guys afterwards. The other 3 lads were buzzing. And he was still quite downbeat, even though he's just won an Olympic gold. And the interviewer asked him, like, you must be so happy now after, being so close to a gold the other day. Now you've got one. He's like, I'm just a bit gutted we didn't get the world record. So even though he's at the pinnacle of his sport, he's just won an Olympic gold medal, he's still focusing on the negative and the not good enough. And you compare and contrast that to the ladies gymnastics team, and they got a surprise bronze. They weren't expecting to do so well. I think they're all relatively new to the sport, and they overperformed and came away with a bronze, and they're all absolutely buzzing, like tears of joy, and made up, couldn't have been happier. And the thing that highlighted for me was what they've got is objectively less. It's a team bronze compared to a team gold, but they're much happier about it than he was. However, he's performing at a higher level, but he's less happy. So is it his never good enough, never satisfied mindset, which keeps him unhappy but more successful? And is it their happy with whatever sort of surprise victories that means they aren't at the top, but they are much happier? And it just was a very clear illustration of the trade-offs there from a psychological point of view, and that the never satisfied mindset might result in more victories, but like never happy is never happy.
Exactly. And I think looking at so having a surprise thing, I guess it all comes down to expectations, right? So like, obviously when they go in, so with the swimmers going to get the world record, so right, they know that's in their grasp. They know they can achieve that. So I understand the downbeat, just like, yeah, we got gold, but we were so close. I get that, because that's going to be a tough pill, because yes, they want the gold, obviously, but they want to dominate for that bit, compared to then the others who didn't expect and then got there. Now, I think what would be interesting is to then see how this carries out from there. So now, obviously, they had so the third place gymnastics team, right? They had a surprise third place. Does this now give them some hope for the next Olympics, to spur them on to fight more, and then they actually become a bit more narrow-minded, focus on the one thing? Maybe other areas of their life start to deteriorate because all their energy is going into now becoming a potential, say, silver or gold in the next Olympics. And obviously with the swimmers, it's like the way they're going to go back, and like that's how you become a winner. That's how you stay winners. That's how you be the best, because all like the fact he was disappointed by 0.02 and then to just miss out on the world record, right? I think the biggest disappointment for him is that he couldn't dominate. And I think that he wanted to win and be a clear winner. And I think it's the same, I guess, when it comes to trying to perform at the highest level. You want to be a standout winner rather than, he just won. It's like, yeah, you still just win, but you want to be the fastest. Usain Bolt, the fastest. Matt Fraser, the dominant. Do you know what I mean? These people stood out. They didn't just win. They made sure they won by a good amount because it shows they are the elite. And it just, for me, I think the whole the Simone thing with the mental health, and I think it is great. I think it's great to have the awareness, but personally, I think, as kind of you touched on as well, when you're at that elite level, it's just not. It shouldn't be a priority. If you get to the Olympics, you are there to do a job. That is your job. You've been training for 4 years to do however many jobs at the Olympics, but say one job. You're there to perform, right? At your highest level. If you try your very best and it's not good enough, you didn't perform on the day, fine. There's quite a few weightlifters that didn't quite perform at their very best, but they still went out on the floor and gave it a go. They didn't go, well, do you know what? I'm not feeling it today. Sorry, guys. It's like, no, because I get it as well, because it was part of a team. She didn't want to pull the team down for when they could have done more. But who knows? She might have been able to stand up at the occasion. Actually, when she's on the floor with her teammates, that got them from silver to a gold.
Yeah.
And that's I think the question. But it's like, it kind of, all this kind of links in. I think it's been an interesting Olympics because there's been some controversial things. And I think the fact sharing the gold, they're then pulling out of it. Is this how the times are going? How we're now getting into this, you can decide? Or it's like, no, you go there and fucking do the job. And that for me is because
we can always decide though.
No, I know.
You've always been able to decide.
No, I know, but this is the thing. If you've decided to get all the way to the Olympic stage, there is no decision anymore. You do you. I'm sorry, but you've worked that hard to get there. You're going to work for 4 or 5 years and then choose to not do something. I'm like, I don't know. It's probably my narrow-minded view or something, but I'm just like...
No, I can see where you're coming from. And we were talking about offline about there are other factors that we don't know enough about what's going on with her. And she just came off some medication, and there is probably a lot more complex than we can fully appreciate. But one of the ways I think about this is that it's all one big system. As an athlete, you have so many aspects to you as a human, and the mental and the physical are obviously two that have been highlighted. If somebody was not quite right physically and they pulled out, no one would really bat an eyelid. But because it's mental, people have a lot less sympathy. Yeah. And I think it's Dina Asher-Smith pulled out of the 200 meter individual competition because she physically wasn't quite right. So she's focusing on the 4x1, and she didn't qualify for the 100 meter individual. She was gutted and she was crying, talking about it, but she still did pull out voluntarily from the 200 meter individual. And I think it's a lot easier to accept that because there is something structural and physical going on. Whereas with Simone, no one can know what it's like to be in her head.
No.
And I think there are just so many factors these days that haven't been as big. And I find it weird that they all turn to Instagram to get their story out straight away. And
it's sad. It's actually sad, I think, that they have to do that. Do you know what made me really sad? How when England missed those 3 penalties at the end, right? And how after, I can't remember who said it, and they said they just knew that if they missed, there was going to be the race card, there was going to be all sorts, and it's just and I remember saying to you last week offline, and it was just how, for me, when we missed those 3 penalties, I did not see colour at all. And this is not me being, I missed up my own arse type thing. I didn't. I saw 5 England players take a penalty. And, unfortunately, we didn't win. And it's just it infuriates me how they had to then go onto social media. They got bullied, like trolled, like, and I think that was disgusting. But like they shouldn't have to apologize. Like I'm like. They're sportsmen. They're trying their best. It's not like they didn't go out there and think, I'm going to fuck this up. Of course not. They tried their best, and it wasn't the result that the country wanted. And obviously, with the Olympics, it's not always the result you're going to get, but it's the participation. You try to. It's not the participation award. You're trying to win. And I do want to make it clear that it's like, I think as you mentioned earlier, I think the fact the mental health thing, I think it's great for now the exposure, as you say, because what I think it will do, and it's kind of like tying your two pieces together there, saying that because we can't see it, this is the issue, because we can't see the as I say, it's not a physical holdback. It's saying, right, I'm not mentally checked in there. It's a really hard one to judge because you're not in her shoes or whoever's shoes, and I just think it's always going to be one of those questionable things, which just makes it is it a viable excuse, or is it a viable reason? Because if someone doesn't perform, I wasn't mentally there. It's like, no, you just didn't perform. That's fine. That's okay. You don't, as I said, like the weightlifters, some of them missed lifts that they shouldn't have missed because they just couldn't hack it on the big stage at that time, even though they normally do. But it's like, yes, there might have been mental health issues. Yes, there might have been, but it's like you're at your peak thing. If you don't perform, you don't perform. Just take it as it is. Like otherwise, I think you just start opening the gates to so many, just like excuses, basically, which they're valid or not. I don't know. This is where, as I said, I want to be very clear. I'm all for a lot of this, but I'm quite bad at articulating. No,
I think I get what you're coming from. Like. Validity is subjective and opinion at the end of the day. Like if somebody pulls out, like Dina Asher-Smith, some people might say she should have run on that hamstring and potentially retorn her hamstring, and that's their thoughts on it. And Adam Jamili had to pull out as well for an injury.
Apparently he'd done it before the race, didn't he? That's what he said.
Yeah. So some people would say just like plow on through that, but that's jeopardizing their long-term career. That's always going to be subjective, but I think the nature of competitive sport is that it filters that out. So Simone Biles now didn't get a team gold, and she pulled out of some other events that she didn't get medals for. So she has been effectively punished by the system, which does reward winners. She may have made huge mental health benefits as a result of that. So net for her as an individual, it's still a decision she'll probably stand by. And who are we to decide what's best for her? We, like, as a sports fan, you want to see the best people perform, but she has to take ownership of her own life and say, you know what, I know loads of people would rather I pushed for a gold medal, but for me, I'm going to look after myself today. And that's an inspiring message in a lot of ways, even though it's not inspiring for a win at all costs type of athlete. And it is just at the end of the day, these are all opinions. There's no absolute right or wrong. Right? None of these are facts. These are just ways of looking at something that's happened. And maybe she'll regret it in her later life. Maybe she won't. But I think in sport, within the rules, people will win if they're better. And
winners always come to the shootout. Yeah, that's true. And I'm looking forward to the next Olympics, and also watching this one come out and stuff. But I think it's going to be a lot of athletes which are going to obviously, like as especially like the CrossFit Games, everything, and they're going to look at their performance, say, right, where can I improve? How can I get better? And fingers crossed, the next one is more like maybe the Olympics that people are used to, and that they can then perform at their uttermost like prestige ways that they can. And I'm gonna leave that there before I go any further into a rabbit hole that I don't want to go in. Anything else you thought about the Olympics?
Loads, mate. I think but yeah, my batteries are getting low, so I probably shouldn't talk too much about it. I think just very quickly, it's interesting all the just like the different variety of sports. You always forget that there are so many weird and wonderful things going on out there. One of my mates has a very strong opinion that anything that's purely subjectively scored isn't a sport. So if it's just judged and there's no way to win without a judge decision, then it's opinion rather than fact, and all sports should be decided by fact. I think that's a slightly controversial opinion, but I can see where he's coming from in that if it is about establishing first, second, third in the world, it shouldn't be left to opinion, because humans are always liable to have biased opinions.
It's exactly why I stopped doing bodybuilding, because I come second to someone which I actually do feel I come second to. When I look at the things that I was happy with my placing, because I felt I was better than third, but I wasn't quite as shredded as the person who come first. But that gave me the reality of, hold on, I've just prepped 6 months of my life for this one event on someone's opinion, which is then why I got into powerlifting, because it's you either lift or you don't. And this is why I think your mate's thing, I'm a lot more on that side of things, because I do think it needs to be clear cut. Otherwise, as you said, it's an opinion. But that's why I also like, say, when you got judges and there's multiple judges and they all give scores. And then, so that's, I think, a fairer way, because it's not just one person's thought. So that's fair. I think there does always need to be more than one person. So
yeah. For sure. And the other thing that I think about the Olympics is it's interesting how within certain sports there are so many variation. Like swimming, there's obviously all the distances, but then there's like 4 different strokes. So you got front crawl, back crawl, butterfly and breaststroke. And it's like, well, why don't you have that in running? Why don't we have backwards running and sideways running?
Sideways
and it's
running.
just like, but who decided what the distinctions are? And yet these people winning so many medals in almost the same thing. I think that's always just an interesting talking point, which maybe we'll save for Lunge and Lift in 2024.
Yeah. So I it's really hard to pull takeaways, I think, from this. And I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I've tried to hold my tongue slightly on certain things, but also try and speak my opinions. And just remember it's just my opinion, it's just my thought, and I can be wrong, and I can be wrong, not always wrong, but can be wrong. And also, I'm not fixed to my opinion. That's what and that's for me. I try to be as much of like the growth mindset kind of person. The thing of, I like to listen to other people's to kind of then understand, because it's not just one answer. And I think that's what a lot of this comes down to as well, is as we're getting exposure to, I'd say, like the mental health and stuff like that, it's now opening my eyes to say, oh, actually, I didn't actually think of it like that. Or, even some of the things you've said today has made me think, actually, that's a good way of thinking. So it's just a different thought process. And I think overall, I really hope you have enjoyed this discussion that we've had on the CrossFit Games and on the Olympics. Anything else to add, Ash?
No, I think if I was to summarize some takeaways, the key things I think would be useful for the listeners are that the rounded athletes win in CrossFit, and like having a glaring weakness should be your focus. Like if you want to be a competitive CrossFitter, you can't have something that's way below the other aspects of your fitness. So be brave and put some focus into them, even if it's at the expense of some of your strengths. We've done it to death now, but the mental performance not being the same as mental health point, I think that needs to become more of a prevalent message in sports, that you are making trade-offs and happiness does not always equal success. So just like you would anything else, consider whether it's worth it. And I think those are probably the main 2 takeaways. I've written some other stuff, but that's been it.
No, I like it. So really do hope you guys enjoyed this one. Slightly different to our normal episodes, but we thought it's nice to kind of get a little bit more of an insight into maybe what we thought of some of these like main stage events, essentially. So, and it's been really, really good to chat to you about this, and I hope we can do something like this again. But as always, thank you very much for giving us your time. Appreciate today. It's been a longer one, just over the hour mark. So if you have listened to the end, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. As always, if you did share it, if you did find a sound bite in it, don't put me out on it and share it on Insta. But if you do, don't forget to tag me and tag Lunge and Lift. But as always, if you did enjoy it, please leave us a review on iTunes and, spread the message. Really appreciate that. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers, guys.